All right, Alex Kuhn, welcome to the podcast.
Stu, pumped to be here. Excited to talk about things from leadership to growing up to finding direction. Love the name of the podcast.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being here, man. I know we had a mutual friend that introduced us, Riley. So definitely a pleasure to have you, man. And one thing I would love to do so that the audience can kind of gauge a little bit about who you are, kind of your roots and where you came from. I was wondering if you could kind of share with everybody what was life like for little Alex as you were growing up?
Little Alex was, for a lack of better terms, a misfit. And little Alex had a bunch of energy, literally was stubborn, literally wanted to do everything on his own, literally wanted to basically, my parents always love to tell their friends the story that even at the age of 4, when they would tell me to come inside, I would yell and scream back, no, I'm discovering, or I'm doing something on my own. I'm this adventure. And so there
Yeah.
is this always part of me that, whether you want to call it entrepreneurial, whether you want to call it stubborn, but, at the end of the day, I've always been one of those kids that, somehow had the blinders on and said, if I wanted to do something, that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And it's served me both well, and it sometimes has hurt me in my path along this incredible journey. But the one thing I always tell people is that, at the end of the day, I'm obsessed with leadership. It's something that I really love to talk about with everybody from all walks of life.
Yeah. Random question. I'm curious, when were you born?
I was born in 1982, and it's funny. I was just on another podcast just before this, and the person asked me how old I was, and I very gratefully. I always tell people when I was a kid, like I always looked like a decade younger than I actually was. Like I was the kid in
Yeah.
I was the kid in college, dude, that literally had braces his freshman year. The nice big blue chompers. I'm sure every
Yeah.
person they ever asked out on the date back then, like, was like, yeah, sure, why not? So why go out with this high school kid? But yeah, man,
That's
always looked
hilarious. And what month were you born in?
April.
April. Okay, because I was born in February, and I'm not into the whole signs or whatever. But
Hmm.
one thing that I've known is I personally have a similar trait where it's like once I'm focused on something, I get stubborn is maybe one word you could say it, or just like determined to say this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing. So I was just kind of randomly curious if you were also
Yeah.
born in that
Well,
same
what
month.
is your sign? What is a February
I'm
sign?
technically an Aquarius, technically.
What's
Well,
the
not technically.
what's
I am
the
an Aquarius.
Aquarius thing? Like, what's the theme of it?
I couldn't tell you, but I was just curious. I was like, maybe you're an Aquarius and I'm an Aquarius, and we both have this trait.
It's
But
funny because I always tell people that I'm not a big sign person. I don't believe in it at all, but I've always had this ritual on my birthday. I always read like what my fortune tells me. And I always say I feel like it tells me the same thing every single year, but I do know the one thing I always read is that you're very focused. You're always very focused on something. I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. So, but I guess
yeah,
that's how it goes.
and I think as you go throughout life, it does take a good amount of focus to live a life that you really enjoy, right? It's like sometimes you can go through life and you can kind of ping pong here and there, but it's like I think the few that really live a life that they love, they know that this is where I want to go. This is a life that I know I can create, right? They have the belief first and foremost, and then they go, I'm not going to stop until I actually make this a reality. Those are the people that do create the life they want, and so one thing I would be curious for you is like, what would you say the role of focus has played in your life? And what do you think the role of focus plays in someone's life as they're trying to figure out their life?
I think everybody that's listening has intentions. And the thing I would always advise everybody, and I always remind myself, I have it written in literally 5 different places in my house, is that intentions are transformed through attention. And at the end of the day,
Hmm.
more often than not, we have these goals, or we have these visions, or we have these ideas, or we have these passions, or whatever we want to name them. But so often we understand that really the key to unlocking them is really attention. How are we focusing on it? What are we doing with it? How are we spending our time, energy, our resources? And resources could be money. Resources could be your partner. I always tell people that, and when I was growing my businesses, I had people that were coming in doing free work for me, and I'd barter with them. I used to be a
Yeah.
college swim coach. That was my first career out of college. And, I had people like, when you have a college coaching program, it's not like football where you have this huge budget. Like you basically have very little
Right.
money. And so you're asking friends to come in and help. You're asking parents to help do fundraisers. So it's this
Yeah.
understanding that when you have a vision, really what it means is that you have to be willing to stretch yourself thin to make sure that vision happens. because I really do believe hyper focus is the most important thing that really allows people to go from where they are today to where they want to be tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, I'm absolutely on the same page. And I think today with, social media and everything, it's easier than ever to get distracted. Like there's something I've kind of come to know called the shiny object syndrome. And it's that, like if you're scrolling on Instagram, let's say for a simple example, it's like in a matter of 5 minutes, you're going to scroll through your feed and see three people that maybe you barely knew, but on Instagram, they are living the life. They're crushing it. One person's in the tech world, one person's in the travel world. And all of a sudden you get this thought of, well, maybe I should do that. And then maybe if I did that, next week, I could be living exactly like that. And I think one of the things that I've learned that's been the most impactful through my life of figuring my life out is the reality that everything takes longer than you think it's going to, and it takes more work than you think it's going to as well. Right. So it's like whenever you figure out what your focus is, you got to kind of put those blinders up and say, okay, I'm going to go on social media. Friends are going to say these shiny objects, but like I have to stay aware with my internal self and knowing where I want to go, and then just allow these shiny objects to be there, to look at them. They're pretty, but keep staying in my lane. And so, one thing I'm curious for you, Alex, is so eventually you grow up, you're kind of this wild child, we could call it, just having a good time, really.
Yeah.
And then you go to college eventually. And I'm curious, when you went through college, did you have a plan of, I'm going to come out, I'm going to be a swim teacher a swim coach when I leave, or kind of what was that process like?
No, not at all. At the age of about 12 years old, I was really into baseball, really into baseball.
Love that.
And then I actually tore my ACL. And now, for those
Mm,
that know sports, it's a pretty common injury we hear about nowadays. But just to give you an understanding, what happens is when you actually tear your ACL, in order to actually repair it, the surgeon actually has to actually drill through your growth plate in your knee. So, for somebody that was still growing at that time in their
mm,
life, they were told that you couldn't have any surgery, that basically your sports career was over. And I can remember just sitting sports was everything to me. And sports in some
yeah,
ways is such an integral part of how I've become who I am today. And I remember just sitting there crying and thinking about, like, what am I going to do? And
yeah.
thankfully, long story short, I found a doctor named Dr. Fu, who basically has perfected the ACL surgery that we all know today. But at the time, I was like, well, what am I going to do? Well, I was doing swimming. It's kind of like the side sport. And I truly think my
Right.
mom said, we need to get you in something where you're basically not standing out in left field and not doing anything for 2 hours. You should be active.
Yeah.
So I just got into swimming, and all of a sudden I loved it. I just loved it, Stu. Like, I just love the idea of like training harder and getting in the weight room and doing some different
Yeah.
things. So at the age of 12, I said, listen, I'm going to do everything I can to make the Olympics. I'm going to do everything I possibly can.
Dang.
Now, being somebody that knows me really well, I put everything I had. I got as close as I possibly could, but let's just say I don't have the Michael Phelps physical talent to actually achieve
Yeah.
it. But long story short, it allowed me obviously to get opportunities to get an assistant coaching job as my first thing out of college,
Nice.
because I was so passionate about. I networked. I went to meet the best coaches. I went to different colleges. I went to different camps. Like, and literally, when I mean I went to different camps, I literally would barter with the camp directors to like work during the side so I could actually afford to go to the camps. And to
Hmm.
me, those are the stories that I remember that have really helped me in terms of my career today. But to get into college coaching swimming, no, it was kind of like one of those things where I was like, well, it's on my bucket list of things to do with my life. So let's just check this one off. But it turned into my first 7 years of a career where I ended up being one
Dang.
of the youngest college coaches in the country at 23, was turning around programs from losing records to national rankings.
Love
And
that.
but I loved it. Love everything about the sport.
So cool. And one thing that I think is kind of interesting we can pick from that too is like, and correct me if I get the order wrong, but it sounds like once you started to graduate college or you were at the end of that college process, starting to build these ideas of maybe I'm going to go into being a coach, networking, right? And going, okay, this is something I want to do. Who is every single person that I've ever spoke to, looked at, had a conversation with that I know in this space, or maybe that I don't even know yet, but I can still reach out to and build a conversation with them because that could potentially lead to opportunity. And I think that is such a key factor in kind of making that transition is the reality that you could graduate and you could say, okay, I want to be a swim coach, let me apply to 15 different places and see what sticks. Or you could do like you did and say, I'm going to get down, I'm going to get dirty, this is what I want to do, I'm going to network, I'm going to meet people, And I would assume that that process was way more effective in not only allowing you to get the position, but even giving you opportunities rather than just getting something from a job application, because you could put face to who you were, right? Build conversations, build meaning with these people, and then that would lead to opportunity. And I'm curious, would you say that that was a big part of kind of stepping into that next phase of your life, was really networking?
My father, at a very young age, he was in sales. And the one thing he
Huh.
always told me is that one thing everybody wants to feel is appreciated. And you should show
Mm,
appreciation, regardless of their titles, regardless of their roles, regardless of if it's the person that you're talking to at the checkout counter to the CEO of Apple. And I believe that was one of the biggest skills that actually, I shouldn't say even skills, but mindsets that it was
yeah.
instilled in me very young. And what I feel that I think is being lost today is that networking is being talked about as a target focused activity
Mm,
where people are saying, I've got to network with this person. I got to network in this field, or I got to be very specific in who I talk to. The reality is, for most of us, let's be clear, it's okay to not know what you want to do with your life. It's okay to not know your
yeah.
life's purpose or what everyone's telling you you should or shouldn't know. But what all of us, I think, can appreciate and understand is that, listen, we want to know people. We want to connect with people. We want to engage with people. And those people that we engage with authentically and truly have an interest in them are going to bring back. I had no idea that all the connections I was
Yeah.
making in
Yeah.
the world was going to lead me to my swim coaching career. I mean, it led to other opportunities. I had opportunities with Nike. I had opportunities with the NSA. I had opportunities and all these things just because instead of using my college career just to get straight A's, I literally used every single event
Yeah.
that the college offered just to go meet people, to build my Rolodex, which basically now it's like our iPhones, right? Contact
Yeah.
list. But at the end of the day, to me, it's not about literally, hey, who I should go network with. It's just start networking. Just start working with everybody, period.
Yeah. Yeah. And you never know where it will lead, right? One day you may go, oh my God, I remember I met that dude that one time, and now he ironically happens to be the head coach of this school,
Yeah.
right? It's
It's
crazy how the dots can connect.
it's crazy because even now, like, not that I'm even in the swim coaching world, but even now in my business world, like, I mean, I have
Right.
former swimmers, former coaches that are coming to me and say, hey,
Yeah.
I want to do what you're doing. And they
Yeah.
buy your programs or they refer you to somebody, whatever.
Right.
And that's the point, because people are people. And when they know, like, and trust someone, we've heard that expression like almost to a nauseum if you're in sales. But the reality is if somebody know, likes, and trusts you, it doesn't even matter what you do. They're going to want to help you in a way that they can.
Yeah. I love it. So let's say then, so you do your swimming coach for 7 years, turning teams around. It sounds like it was an unbelievable experience. I'm assuming that you probably really enjoyed it
Love
and loved it. So cool. And so I'm curious then, what was the moment, if you can remember it, when you go, this isn't it anymore?
it.
And you start looking to sort of this next chapter, which is what you're doing now with a lot of leadership and coaching and all of that. Do you remember the moment when you kind of had that internal, I don't know if this is it?
It was literally my last year, and it wasn't one of those. Just to give you a little insight in me, I'm not somebody who really analyzes my decisions a lot. I really, if I intuitively feel it, I go for it.
Huh.
And year 7, I really had a nice transformation with this swim program out in Los Angeles, California. In fact, I know that's near you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just ended the season. We just sent a swimmer to nationals. It was one of the first times this team has done it in years. And I was sitting there and I was thinking about just kind of that bucket list and just thinking about life. And all of a sudden I said, man, there's a ceiling to the difference I can make as a swim coach. Not that it's a bad difference or it's less or
Right.
more or less important. It was just the fact of, is this where I want to go all in for another few years? Because I had opportunities with some major colleges in the area. And I thought to myself two things to be truthful. Number one, it
Yeah.
is 100+ hour a week job. If you really want to be the best at it, it's 100+ hour a week job.
Dang.
And unlike football and basketball, truthfully, the money is not there in the swimming world as it is in the football and
Right.
basketball world, which I think most people can understand. And I even understood, right? But the second thing was saying, like, you know what? My talent is not swim coaching. Like, it's not teaching swimmers how to swim. The things that were allowing me to be very successful were teaching leadership, was teaching culture, was really working with humans on literally development. And so I had
Hmm.
literally no idea when I went into this entrepreneur. I had no clue. Like, I wasn't the guy that said, "Hey, I
Yeah.
have this great idea, or I had this great product, I had this great technology." I said, "Listen, I've got a skill, and I want to see how I could apply it into this business world." And that really was just it. I said, basically, boom, done. I took a job that was a lot less hours that kind of made myself similar place so I could make that transition, which for
Right.
anybody that's thinking about starting their own business, my biggest advice there's two resources that you want to have. You want to have some startup capital, but you also want to have startup networks. And I think that's
Mm.
always the second one is the one that most people end up missing. But literally, it was like a 2-month decision, Stu. And I said, you know what? I'm going down this route. I'm going all in.
Huh. And so you left swimming and did you go straight into, I know you said you started to work with another company. Did you also start your own business on the side, or when did that come in?
Yeah, I always loved that. I worked for another company for about 9 months. And the thing that was a good and blessing and bad in disguise of the
Yeah.
fact is that, went into this company and I realized instantly that I was not built for the corporate world. Like swim coaching is like literally you can build your own team as long
Right.
as you're successful and the students are
Different. Yeah.
academically well and you're not causing pains in the college community. Basically, the athletic director and president leave you alone. But so when you're in a corporate setting, there's structures, there's management, there's protocols, there's a lot of different things. And I have no problems with corporate. It just wasn't a fit for me. And so
Right.
after 9 months where I just was tearing my hair, feeling like, oh my gosh, we've just literally tripled this department size. And now you want to cut my funds and, do all these different things.
Right.
We had a falling apart. We'll just say that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was building the business during the whole time, right? I mean, I would go to work, I'd come home, work on the business, go home, come home, work on the business. And what's so funny is that, during that time, the things that we think are so important, if you really look back on it, they're just not the name of your company, the website,
Yeah.
the perfect copy. Nobody was talking about funnels at that point, right? But they were talking
Right.
about like what your video hosting looked like, how you scripted. But the things that I think people care about, like they think is so important when you start a business, just it's not. It's literally getting out there and saying, hey, do I have something that people want to buy? Like literally the first thing. If you just can't, just go out and test it. Just literally
Yeah.
offer it, and people are buying it, then at least you have something to start with. But yeah, it was quite an interesting transition to literally going from this person who identified themselves as a swim coach to now I'm on my own. And it's like, well, how do I identify myself? How do I identify my business? I really still had no idea at that.
Right.
So blessing in disguise, I was able to have the stubbornness, as we've mentioned many times, to keep
Yeah.
going despite all the massive challenges I faced along the way. But at the end of the day, obviously I'm very grateful for those experiences.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quote one of my mentors used to tell me when I first, I'd say, really took a deep dive in entrepreneurship. Is he said, "A crappy plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow because tomorrow doesn't exist."
Yes.
Right? And it's just that philosophy of you just got to jump and figure it out along the way, because that's going to be better than just sitting and looking and waiting for the right moment, because the truth is the perfect moment's never going to come, right? It's like you got to take that first step now. And um it's like you make one step, then you take another step, you take another step, another, and eventually you go, wow, this place is pretty beautiful. And so I'm curious, what was the first business that you started? So you're building it on the side, have a falling out with the company, say this isn't my fit, you go full time into the business. What was the business?
So I always tell people that for 3 years, I failed in three specific businesses. So the first one was just saying, hey, and it's always the life coaching mistake 101. I can help you with anything. So, and
Yeah, yeah.
going, that person who literally had the business cards are basically no thicker than the piece of paper that most of us print. I think it's 20-pound paper that we're printing on. But so for basically, it was just networking. And thankfully
Huh.
I got business, not because I really had any good business. Truthfully, I had no good business. What I did have though was people that kind of bought into the idea that I like your energy. I like your attitude. I
Yeah.
like what you're about. So could you just help me with this? And yes, it didn't matter what it was. Yes, I will help you. I will figure it out there. So
Yeah.
literally I would take like a $200 a month client and probably spend 20 hours either coaching them or doing things on the back end just to kind of support them. So that was the first business. Then I realized I was getting ironically, I was getting a lot of parents that were
Hmm.
like had student athletes. And they said, hey, I kind of see you as a life coach for kids. Could you like start working, with my kids on helping them how to be leaders or not be picked on or how to defend
Right.
themselves and, obviously in a way. So that actually was pretty successful in comparison to where I was. I was able to make, ends meet, but it was tough because basically I would spend all day trying to interact with these parents. And then every single night I was driving from one house to the other to,
Hmm.
work with these kids and to kind of
Right.
give them some, mental skills and some, basically tools to help them, with their own situations. And at the time I was like, man, this is just, I just couldn't imagine how it could scale. Like, I just didn't know how I was going to live a
Right.
point where it's like, how could I get out of this business? So then the reality is I had started people like coming to me because I was, as I think you can say, like, obviously I love physical fitness. So people are like, hey, can
Right.
you start kind of helping me like stay in shape and do those types
Huh.
of things? And then that was this is like maybe the biggest lesson, especially when you're when you're starting out, is that, often we get so focused on what we're doing as opposed to list and feeling what the opportunities are out there. And so finally, I say in year 3 is finally when I said, okay, I'm just going to listen for the opportunities.
Hmm.
And I was at a
I
gym
like
one day.
that.
I was at a gym and I heard this, this trainer, and a great guy, but the type of guy that's yelling and screaming and, go, 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 go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 50% of his audience was men, and they loved it. You could tell. I mean, they're Russian.
Yeah. They're getting
And
jacked
50,
up.
yeah, 50% of his audience were women. And they're like, oh, like, you could just see like they're just like,
Yeah.
whatever, whatever. And he comes over to me and he goes, Alex, he's like, I've got this problem. He's like, I say, he's like, because at this gym, all the trainers were based on their clients losing weight. So basically they kept the
Huh.
jobs as long as their clients were maintaining their weight loss. It was a really very high performance level gym for the trainers. And he's like, Alex, he's like, all my men clients are doing great. But all my women clients, I don't understand how to motivate them. I don't understand how to talk with them. Like that, they'll lose weight and they'll gain it. They'll lose weight, they'll gain it.
Yeah.
And that was the eureka moment for me because I realized that so many people were trying to help people lose weight, but very few people were helping people how to maintain their weight loss or
Hmm.
maintain that. And this was back in 2013. And I know that's coming out more and more, but back then nobody was talking about it. Nobody was talking about it. So I had this idea that what if I actually built basically a membership portal, a membership coaching that was going to be free for the gym trainers that come in, and we would give them some communication skills and some leadership exercise and some personality profiles to help them motivate their clients. And then
Right.
if their clients wanted to come in for their own work, they could do it for like a $49 per month membership. And that was the business I first exploded. We got it into about 5,000 gyms across the country. We had
Nice.
25,000 members. I ended up selling, but that was kind of the first win in my entrepreneurs. But I
Right.
tell people, like I said, it took 3 years. It took 3 years to figure that out.
Right. Okay. And so one thing I'm curious, and I'm wondering where this trip happened. But in doing some research on you, I know you kind of went through these 3 businesses. You had some rough times through it, and at some point, and I'm not quite sure where throughout this, but you went on basically like a weekend of soul searching is
Yes.
how I heard about it,
Hmm.
and asked some difficult questions to yourself that really helped yourself kind of figure out this next direction in your life. And I'm curious, one, if you could explain maybe a little bit of that soul searching weekend for us, and then I'm really curious on what were those tough questions.
Yeah. And Stu, I got to give you credit. There's so many times I go on these podcasts and you can tell they just didn't do the research and they have the canned questions. So I appreciate you just literally actually doing the research. I think
Yeah,
it says a lot
absolutely.
about
I
you.
love it.
So I wanted to honor you in that. There was a weekend. So I was doing some, like I said, like I was kind of like in the process of this athletic coaching and some doing some different things. And I can remember I was, long story short, I found the client. And to me, when I call sales, really for me, it was begging. Like, hey, just dads, give me a chance to work with me, please. I beg of you. I'll do
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
to just give me one shot. And so this client specifically, they lived about an hour north of me. And they said, well, I've got $25. Like, what could you do for $25? And they said, I'll come up, I'll give you a 3 hour, blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, it made it like sound like this too good to be true. And they said, okay, fine. And they said, can I pay you in a check when I get up there? I mean, literally was like, I was like, yes, I'll take it, whatever,
Yeah.
that's fine. And the day came and I'm driving, north of me for an hour, right? To go to basically spend an entire day for $25 with one person. So
Goodness.
not exactly a great business
Yeah,
model.
yeah.
And I literally, truly, Stu, I was about to get off the exit. I was literally about to just exit the ramp. And all of a sudden, I heard that ding in your pocket. And you just get that sickening feeling of what that is. I'm like, I know what this is. I know
Yeah.
exactly what that is. And it wasn't the first person that did it that week, but I, you know, looked at my phone and it said, "Hey, Alex, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Maybe some other time." And
Oh,
Stu, just I, I was heartbroken, like to the point where like it was just a tough week. I was up 17 hours a night every night. I wasn't sleeping. I was stressed out. I just literally like was on my wits end and thinking like this is going to be a small win that I can at least hold on to something, just hold on to just one little piece.
right.
And I truly went into a fog. Like I didn't stop. I just kept going. I didn't turn around. I just kept driving
Hmm.
and driving and driving and just kind of, just let the music listen. And for those of you that have been in that situation, you just literally aren't even thinking. You're just literally in this daze. And it feels like things around you are going in slow motion, but you're just kind of there. You're kind of like almost feel like you're in this outer body experience because you don't want to be inside of yourself because it's so painful to be there.
Hmm.
4 hours later, Stu, I was in Buffalo. I literally came out of this day. I was in Buffalo. I truly, to this day, have no idea how I got there. It was like 9 o'clock Friday night. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to go home.
Yeah.
I don't want to see my parents. I don't want to see my friends. I don't want to see the person I'm dating. I just was so embarrassed. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to call everyone and said, hey, I've got a potential speaking engagement in Buffalo this weekend, making it up. I said,
Yeah.
I'll be home. I'll talk to you guys over the weekend. And I may not be able to talk with you, text you. So do not worry about me. But I literally just went up to Buffalo and I just wanted to get away from everything. I didn't know nothing about Buffalo. I knew no one in Buffalo. I knew
Yeah.
nothing about it. So like literally it was an entirely new ecosystem for me not to think about anything else but to think about myself. And so I went to literally Walmart. No, I have no money in the bank. And literally what I plan on doing was I bought a tent, I bought some stuff to basically camp out at this free park in Buffalo,
I love it.
knowing I was going to take the stuff back because I couldn't afford it.
Right.
I need a place to like sleep so I'm not sleeping in the rain and that sort of situation. And I just got up there and I just started thinking about just life, literally not trying to think about anything, just let questions come in and just
Yeah.
kind of let I'm not saying that the universe is everything, just I'm going to let the world speak to me. I'm going to see what comes up inside of me. And finally, without the questions, like truthfully, a lot of the questions were, why do you suck, Alex? Why are you failing, Alex? Like there were so many negative questions that were hitting me and hitting me and hitting me and hitting me. And I remember there was a point where all of a sudden I said, no, Alex, I'm not going to answer those questions. Those
Hmm.
aren't questions I want to answer. And then all of a sudden, the questions I saw unconsciously started to change in me. And the questions were this: what are you really good at? What allowed you to be successful before? What is the favorite thing that you enjoy teaching and talking about? But then the one final question came up that I think was the game changer for me. And
Yeah.
it's been a game changer, I think, for a lot of the people that whether I work with or, in my world. But the question is this is what made me successful as a swim coach that I'm not doing as an entrepreneur? And what
Hmm.
I realized was that I was trying to do everything everybody else was telling me I should do, as opposed to doing the things that I know I'm great at.
Yeah.
I was trying to build funnels, websites. I was trying to figure out logos, business cards.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out legal documents. I was on a learning curve, but literally the things I'm great at, I'm great at connecting with people. I'm great at motivating people. I'm great at getting people to buy in to something. And I wasn't doing that. I was literally not doing those things.
Yeah.
So I said, regardless of what happens, I'm giving myself 6 months. And I'm going to give two craps about what everybody else tells me. I stopped all the coaching. I stopped, the free,
Yeah.
like how you sign up for 55 million free lead gens. I deleted the email. I said, I'm just going to go all in doing those three things. And I'm just going to focus on that for the next 6 months. And to me, the biggest advice, it doesn't even matter if you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter if you have a job, but I really do believe fulfillment in your work, fulfillment in your life,
Hmm.
fulfillment with what you're doing
Yes.
comes not from just focusing on the things you suck at, but truly building around the things that you're great at and you really want to master. And so those were the three things I went back and I just started doing. That's when I saw the opportunity with overcoming obstacles. That's all of a sudden when instead of charging $25 for a client, somebody wanted to work with me one-on-one, I was charging
Yeah.
$5,000 to work with me at that point,
Yeah.
because my confidence soared, because the belief in what I was doing
Yeah.
soared, because of what I was able to help people and tell people I could help them with. So coming from a place of honesty and integrity and really having the courage to say, I am better at this than anybody else, and I'm going to continue to work on it and help support you. But that to me has been the biggest game changer in not just my entrepreneurial life, but
Yeah.
truly all aspects of my life.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful question because I think everybody can go back and look at their past and say, well, what was something that I really enjoyed, for example, and what's something that I enjoyed doing there that I'm not doing now? Or whether you're looking at success, what's something I was successful at? What's something that I did then that I'm not doing now? It's like you can apply it with so many different ways. What was the time when I was passionate in my life? Well, what's something that I'm not doing now that I was doing when I was passionate? It's such a uh, multifaceted question that can bring you so many beautiful distinctions in every area of your life. I feel like that's I love that. And so now let's say you eventually I'm assuming this takes you to Born to Lead and everything you're doing there.
Mhm.
And I'm really curious kind of two things. One, obviously, if people want to get more information on you, this conversation has been a massive amount of value. So I would love if you could kind of point people to where they could go. And then the second thing is I was wondering if you could kind of share with people, you had those questions, you had these discoveries. Now you're doing everything with Born to Lead. I'm curious if you could fill people in a little bit as far as, what you're doing with that as well.
Sure. And if it's okay, I'm gonna steer just a little bit to the left here for 1 second because you said
Steer
something.
away.
Okay, beautiful. Because one of the things I think that gets so lost is that you got to find your passion, you got to find your purpose, like what those callings are. And yet at the end of the day, all of us need to understand how we operate from our strengths. And what I found, and this is something working with thousands of people,
Yeah.
is that one of the questions we ask people. So if you're struggling to figure out what your strength is or what your talent is or what's what it is, instead of trying to figure out what your purpose is or what your calling is, and instead of actually saying what you think it is, I want you to start thinking about what the things that people may have said they disliked about you or didn't appreciate about you. And let me give you a perfect example. I'll use myself as an example
Yeah.
in this situation. As I've mentioned to you at the very beginnings, too, I was a misfit. I was the kid who wanted to talk, who wanted to connect, who wanted to get excited, who wanted to, rejoice. And school didn't exactly appreciate that part of Alex.
Yeah.
Alex, sit down. Alex, be quiet. Alex, do this. Alex, will you just stop? I also mentioned I was the kid that was so tunnel vision that if I was doing something and I wanted to do, to the point where everybody in my family will tell you that sometimes it could be a family function. If I got into something, they'll be like, Alex is in his own world. Don't try to talk to him because he won't hear you. Because literally, my wife loves to share that she'll have to scream at me to get my attention if I get focused on something.
Mm.
These are some of those traits that often, maybe from a how we look at it, is like, well, that's a weakness of mine. Maybe that's a bad place of mine. But the reality is that's your innate skill. That is something you intuitively and naturally go for. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling to figure out what exactly that is, go back and think about the things that maybe people not just loved about you, but what are the things people maybe even complained about you or picked on about you, or you just literally did and people said you shouldn't be doing that. Because I guarantee there's a nugget of gold in there that most people are missing. I just had to share that, Stu, because
Yeah.
I
Please.
feel like
Thank
so
you.
often we look at the positive. We need to transform and reinforce what the negatives people said were into what our strengths are.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So,
So
and let me pick this apart a little bit quicker because I want to
yeah.
make sure I understand this. So, in school, then some of the not good things were Alex sit down, Alex just focus, Alex do that, and the positive that came from that was, can you walk me through that, or like
Sure.
how you got you right? Because I want
Yeah.
everyone listening to this to be able to do it in their own
Because
life.
I know I'm stubborn. I know I'm stubborn. So even if somebody told me don't do something, I did it. But I don't think not everybody's like that. Let's be clear. Some people are just, my wife loves to say she's a great rule follower. She's like, whatever somebody told me to do, I do. And I
Mm,
understand that. There's a power to that as well. But if I literally listen to people, I would be an introvert. I would
yeah,
be an engineer. I would have gone into the sciences. That's where you got to make the money. But also, more importantly, I shouldn't be connecting with people. I should be, instead of going to 55 banquets
right.
on the weekend, you should be in your
See,
room or library
yeah,
studying all the time. That's what you should be doing, Alex, if you wanted to be successful. I just think there's just a part of this that, listen, if somebody's saying that you should be doing this or to be successful, I would challenge the question and say, why do you feel like that's the only way to be successful? Is that what worked
yeah,
for you? And more importantly, does that have to be the only way that works for me? And that's why I talk about success DNA. I talk about this idea that, listen, we're all uniquely born, but more importantly, that it's not the idea of trying to fit yourself into where you want to be, but more importantly, trying to be where you are and fit everything else around the world
mm,
into that.
I love it. I love it. Okay, and so what I'm seeing and taking away from this as well, and all our listeners, you can do this with your own life. Is it's like in school they were maybe saying your stubbornness wasn't the best thing, but look at where you're at in life. Obviously, it paid off. And then just the aspect of in school, you were trying to talk to this person, have conversations with that, go explore this, let your curiosity lead you to here. And as though in school they may have said, "Hey, that's not a strength." Throughout the rest of your life, that's been a theme that's brought you to where you are today. So I'm glad that I was able to full circle that. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And so again, if you could share with people, what are you up to at Born to Lead? Where can they get more information on you, and kind of fill everybody in with that?
Yeah, sure, Stu. And so for everybody on here, the one thing I truly believe is that everybody was born to be a leader. And that's a very
Love it.
controversial thing in the leadership world. And what I mean very simply is this, is that
Hmm.
you are born to lead, but you're not supposed to lead like everybody else. And one of those very specific skills that you kind of heard me mention about is this idea of discovering your own success DNA, which
Yeah.
very simply means what is the natural innate leadership style that you possess? What are those talents? How does it work for you? And ultimately, how can you apply it into your world? Now, for if you're an entrepreneurial person or have even thought about business, then what I would recommend you do is this. And even if you're not, you're actually going to get a lot of cool human development and leadership
Yeah.
development tips. But if you go to the website, Alex-Kuhn, my last name spelled KUHN.com / the podcast episode, Finding Direction. I'll repeat it again. I actually have a free Success DNA course. You can download it. It's literally the same program I give to my
Love it.
multi-million dollar and billion-dollar CEO clients and everybody. It's the first thing I step. It's just an appreciation for Stu for having me on here, and just for
Thank you.
everybody that's on here that I really appreciate where they are in this world. So again, you can go to alex-kuhn.com / finding direction, and it's yours for free.
Perfect. And we'll obviously have all that in the show notes. So everybody, you can go in the show notes, absolutely grab that link, check it out. And the last question I want to ask you, Alex, we ask this to all of our guests, is this show's all about helping people find direction, but we are massive believers that it's through execution, right? That's how you ultimately get clarity, is through execution. And so what I would be curious is, what is one thing that you would say our listeners could do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
Yeah, there's 3 traits that we find with every single leader. And to me, leaders are role models, leaders are doers, leaders are action takers. And so if you right now started measuring these 3 traits, they're not innate gifts, these are practicable traits. If you start asking yourself, am I doing better at these 3 things? I guarantee over the next 90 days, you're going to see more positive momentum in your life than anything else you could do. And that is, first, honesty. Are you asking yourself the tough questions every day and asking yourself if you're doing them? Integrity. Are you showing up feeling good about the work and the things that you're doing and the way you're treating people? And finally, and maybe the most important one, which is courage. Are you doing something every single day that pushes you a little bit beyond what you were the other day? And if you just literally take an Excel sheet and literally measure yourself over the next 90 days, you literally come to my website. Even with the 20,000 people that are following
Yeah.
me, I reply to every single email. If you email me in 90 days, let me know where your life
Yeah.
is from then to now. And if you really are consistently doing it, I bet there's no better exercise you can do in this world.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Alex. That's an incredible exercise. I'm going to go do it myself. And thank you again for being on the podcast, man. You are given a tremendous amount of value, and just a lot of really good things I think people can apply to their life. So thanks so much, brother.
Do appreciate you, man. Love what you're doing here. Love the audience you have, and you're the real deal, my friend.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.